What's happening, people? This is a very interesting article. May 18th, 2024. Tales of Underground Railroad add to mystery of Kepler Barn. Penn State continues with demolition plan. And this is a view of the Kepler Barn from the house across Route 45 in Ferguson Township. The barn is owned by Penn State, which plans to demolish the structure this summer.
Richard Kepler vividly remembers the small door he found on a wall in the family barn more than 60 years ago. Kepler is a great-nephew of Millie Kepler, who owned the Ferguson Township barn along Route 45 in Centre County. The barn is now owned by Penn State and is slated for demolition after falling into disrepair. As a child, Richard Kepler spent a lot of time at his Aunt Millie's farm, exploring every space of the cavernous barn. One day in the early 1960s, he was playing in the barn with Millie's granddaughter, Millicent. That's when he found the mysterious door. We were on the ground floor and it was on the wall on the right side, close to where there is a sinkhole near the highway, he said. A small door on the wall. I asked Millicent what it was for, and she said, "We can't go in there. It's off limits." Naturally, Richard was curious and asked why Aunt Millie forbid opening the door. Millicent, he recalled, told him, that's where they hid. The people. I asked her what people. Richard Kepler vividly remembers the small door he found on a wall in the family barn more than 60 years ago. Kepler is a great-nephew of Millie Kepler, who owned the Ferguson Township barn along Route 45 in Centre County. The barn is now owned by Penn State and is slated for demolition after falling into disrepair. As a child, Richard Kepler spent a lot of time at his Aunt Millie's farm, exploring every space of the cavernous barn. One day in the early 1960s, he was playing in the barn with Millie's granddaughter, Millicent. That's when he found the mysterious door. We were on the ground floor and it was on the wall on the right side, close to where there is a sinkhole near the highway, he said. A small door on the wall. I asked Millicent what it was for, and she said, "We can't go in there. It's off limits." Naturally, Richard was curious and asked why Aunt Millie forbid opening the door. Millicent, he recalled, told him, that's where they hid. The people. I asked her what people, and she said, "The black folk," said Richard, who now resides in Maine. A small room underneath trapdoors located in the floor of the log cabin portion of the Kepler house. Family stories indicate the farm may have been connected to the Underground Railroad. At the time, Richard thought nothing more of the door or what he was told, but that changed as he got older. Now, he wonders if his Aunt Millie's farm was once somehow connected to the Underground Railroad, a secret network that aided escaped slaves on their journey north during the 19th century. The door in the barn isn't the only reference to the Underground Railroad that Richard heard about while at the Kepler farm. He recalls a time when he was 10 years old, in 1964, when his Aunt Millie took him into the dining room. There was a panel on the wall, decorated to match the interior of the house, and his aunt acted very cautiously. She said, "I'm only going to show this one time," Richard said. The panel slid out just enough for me to crawl through and I asked her what it was. She said, "This is where they went to hide. The black folk." Richard crawled inside the panel and a passageway led him to the front of the house, which was originally a log cabin, he said. A recent visit to the Kepler home revealed a set of trapdoors in the log cabin portion of the house, concealing a short staircase leading to a small room below with no windows and a dirt floor. It's unclear what the room was used for. These are all things I experienced growing up, but for some reason Aunt Millie didn't talk much about it, he said. It was something she didn't want to be known. She was always secretive about it. A difficult history to trace. Phil Ruth, a historian and Bellefonte Historical and Cultural Association board member, said there is documented evidence of Underground Railroad stops or routes in Centre County, and in Ferguson Township. However, claims are numerous and often refuted, he said. Secret hiding places and cubby holes in old houses aren't uncommon, Ruth said, but linking them to the Underground Railroad can be difficult. It's unlikely you'll find records because at that time people could get in trouble for being a part of it. Sometimes you can find documents from after the Civil War when there was no longer any reason to keep it hidden, he said. While there is evidence of an Underground Railroad route traversing Ferguson Township, it led to Stormstown. Ruth said he hasn't heard of any account of people being moved near Route 45, which is where the Kepler farm is located. He also noted that Jacob Musser Kepler and his father, Johann, who were alive during the Civil War era, were strong Democrats, according to his research, and due to the political party's platform at that time likely would not have held abolitionist sympathies. Searching for evidence of the Underground Railroad is really chasing ghosts. There was an effort to get information in 1930, but once those people died a lot was lost, Ruth said. Richard Kepler pointed out that many people lived and worked on the Kepler farm throughout the Civil War. Johann had 19 children from 2 marriages, he said, and they were all on the farm. Proof is the tough thing to find, but these stories keep it alive, he said. Who are these black folk that were being hid in the house or in the room in the barn? My Aunt Millie got those stories from somewhere. Fate of the barn. Currently, access to the Kepler barn is prohibited by Penn State, and the university has decided to demolish the structure this summer after delaying the decision for several years while searching for a potential buyer or other solutions. According to a statement from the university, engineers inspected the barn and declared it structurally unsound and a safety hazard. The university will proceed with the barn's removal this summer. This decision was made in light of the university's budget challenges, the current condition of the barn, the cost to renovate or restore, and the operational needs of our agricultural research practices at Rock Springs, the statement reads. The university has made significant investments to restore barns and other structures, such as the renovation of the nearby barn across from the Department of Agriculture Livestock Evaluation Center and the Parsons Barn on the Ag Progress Day site. We appreciate that these farms and barns, and the families that lived there, are part of the history, memories, and stories of this region. However, based on all of the factors already discussed, the Kepler Dehaas barn must be removed. The news didn't sit well with Karen Dehaas, who, along with her husband at the time, bought the barn from a Kepler relative in 2000, 10 years after Millie Kepler died. According to a real estate brochure from the 1990s that advertised the farm, the barn was considered one of the largest still existing in Center County. Dehaas said they sold the barn to Penn State around 2006 and had no idea the university would let it fall into disrepair. Penn State was bugging my husband all the time to sell the barn. We just assumed they would use it for tractors and supplies, she said. It was in excellent shape, the floors were strong and the beams were huge. I'm really sorry we sold the barn to Penn State. Priscilla Delian, president of the Historic Barn and Farm Foundation of Pennsylvania, said the Kepler barn is an icon on the local landscape and a symbol of architectural ingenuity and historical significance. And that is why the Kepler barn warrants additional investigation, to measure its complete significance in the history of Center County and Penn State University. It would be tragic to demolish the Kepler barn before this is done, Delian said. Legacy of Aunt Millie. Millie Kepler's life and achievements as a farmer were the subject of several news articles decades ago. As a widowed, single mother who inherited a farm that was in debt, Richard said his aunt had steep odds to overcome. But it was the loss of her son, Aaron Charles, in 1931, that may have been her true motivation to keep the farm going. Aaron Charles was 14 when he was struck by a vehicle and killed on Route 45. Richard said he was coming from the barn and walking to the house when the tragedy occurred. I think she kept the farm going as therapy for the loss of her son, he said. She put her head down, said, "This is our place," and went to work after that. Her remaining 3 children helped, but in large part Millie Kepler did most of the work. Richard said she excelled in raising potatoes, planting 40 acres each year and grossing over $1,000 per acre at one time. All the local farmers treated Aunt Millie like one of them. She earned their respect as a farmer, he said. And like any true farmer, Millie was often found working long hours in the barn. Before she died, Richard said she was asked by numerous people to sell the farm. She was adamant about never selling it, he said. She always kept a double-barrel shotgun in her bedroom. If she was alive today and knew that Penn State wanted to tear down her barn, she would be standing in front of the haymow with that shotgun turning the bulldozers away. Kepler roots with Penn State. According to Richard Kepler, more than 30 members of the Kepler family graduated from Penn State over the years. Millie's husband, Aaron, graduated with a degree in agriculture when it was known as Pennsylvania State College. Considering Penn State's founding as an agricultural college, and the only land-grant university in the state, Richard said it's puzzling there wouldn't be an attempt to restore the Kepler Barn or find an amicable solution to save the historic structure. Penn State has strong agricultural roots, and add in the stories about the Underground Railroad and the prominence of Aunt Millie as a female farmer, that barn has significance in all of that, he said. It was one of the largest barns in central Pennsylvania, and walking through it was like a history lesson. The barn speaks, and once it's gone there is no voice.
Okay, guys, the votes are in, and you can see 76% want to restore it. I voted to restore it.